At a time when America is searching for heroes to lead us, it has the genuine article in John McCain. Whether as a Navy pilot in Vietnam or in the U.S. Senate, his whole life he's thrived on challenges, and he's always put America's interests ahead of his own. Now John McCain looks ahead to his greatest challenge yet, as he runs for president to restore integrity to the office, reform government, and renew the American dream. A son of the Navy, John Sidney McCain was born into a family where duty, honor, and country are articles of faith. His father and grandfather were admirals, and at the age of 17, young John McCain followed in their footsteps to the U.S. Naval Academy at Annapolis. There began a lifetime of service and devotion to America. Nearly all the men in the McCain family had made their reputations during wartime, and John wanted to keep faith with them. A veteran aircraft carrier pilot, he asked to go to Vietnam. On July 29, 1967, aboard the aircraft carrier Forrestal, Lieutenant Commander McCain, an A-4 Skyhawk pilot, was preparing to take off on a bombing mission over Vietnam when a horrifying disaster struck. A missile accidentally fired from a nearby plane, striking the fuel tanks on McCain's plane. In the ensuing explosions and fire, McCain escaped by crawling onto the nose of his plane and diving into the fire on the ship's deck. He turned to help a fellow pilot, only to be blown back 10 feet when more bombs exploded. It took 24 hours to contain the inferno on the Forrestal, but not before 134 men lost their lives and more than 20 planes were destroyed. After the Forrestal disaster, McCain could have returned home, but instead he volunteered for more combat duty aboard the carrier Oriskany. In the early morning of October 26, 1967, Lieutenant Commander McCain departed for his 23rd bombing mission over North Vietnam. He and his fellow pilots were targeting a power plant in the center of Hanoi. As McCain was completing his bombing mission, a Soviet-made surface-to-air missile struck his plane, shearing off the right wing. McCain ejected as his plane spiraled violently to earth. The force of the ejection knocked him unconscious. Both of his arms and one leg were broken. He came to as he plunged into a lake near his bombing target. Quickly, an angry mob gathered, seeking retribution for the rain of bombs. Dragging him from the lake, they broke his shoulder with a rifle butt and bayoneted him repeatedly. McCain was loaded into a truck and delivered to the infamous and hated Hanoi Hilton. McCain's condition deteriorated badly. His fellow POWs, shocked at his appearance, thought McCain was near death. But they were determined that he survive, and thanks to their care, his health gradually improved. Sensing a propaganda prize, his captors offered McCain early release when his father, Admiral Jack McCain, was appointed commander of all U.S. forces in the Pacific. But McCain repeatedly refused early release, citing the code of conduct that prisoners should be released in the order in which they were captured. For his repeated defiance, his communist captors savagely beat him. Before it was over, McCain spent 5.5 years as a prisoner of war, 2 of them in solitary confinement.
There are 3 keys to successful survival in a prison camp situation such as I and my friends were in. First is faith in God. The other is faith in one's fellow prisoner. You have to have faith that your fellow prisoners were working just as hard as you were to resist, and faith in one's country.
By 1973, the war was over, and McCain and nearly 600 fellow POWs were released and came home, ending the longest incarceration in U.S. history.
During my absence in Vietnam, there was a large number of pets of all kinds that were kept in our home, and my daughter Sydney was 6 months old when I left to go to Vietnam and was 6 years old when I returned. So when my wife Carol was telling her that, she said, "Your daddy's coming home," and she said, "Oh yeah," and she said, and where will he sleep, and what do we feed him?"
After extensive physical rehabilitation, John McCain regained flight status and continued service to his country. But sadly, Like a lot of prisoners of war, John's marriage ended several years later. Nearing the end of his Navy career, now Captain John McCain's last duty assignment was as the Navy's liaison to the U.S. Senate. It was during this time that he met Cindy Hensley from Phoenix. John and Cindy were married in 1980, and they made their home in Arizona. By 1982, an Arizona House seat opened up, and John, seeing a new way to serve, announced his candidacy. He won the election and was re-elected overwhelmingly 2 years later. John and Cindy decided to raise their young children in Arizona, so John maintained a ritual of returning home every weekend.
John is a loving, kind, strong father. He's involved in every way with these children, even with our odd circumstances of not living on the same coast at all times. He understands the importance of being there and being relied upon, and also has taken an active and equal role in all of the things that aren't so fun, like discipline and homework and all the things that take place on a daily life of a busy family. Bridget is our adopted child. And while I was working briefly in Bangladesh, we made the decision to go see Mother Teresa's orphanage. We were a medical team. But I was getting ready to leave. The nuns were very persuasive and said, "Could you please take her? She needs medical help." And I find it hard to say no to certainly a group of nuns, but to a child that needs help. I realized on board the plane that I simply couldn't give this child up. I showed up in Phoenix. John whispered, "Where is she going to go?" And I said, "Well, I thought maybe she'd go to our house." And he said, "Well, I had a feeling that might be the case. You know, she's welcomed in our home." He's a very kind and very loving husband. What I would like the American people to know about John McCain is that he's a man of character, a man of honor, a decent man, a man of his word, and a strong family man, and someone that we can trust.
In 1986, Barry Goldwater announced his retirement from the U.S. Senate, and John was elected to succeed him and continue Goldwater's tradition of plain talk conservatism. From day one in Washington, John McCain has been guided by one cause above all others: the fight for freedom. While America yearns for heroes who can lead us, John McCain's life is a genuine inspiration because he has always put America's interests before his own. His mission? To make government smaller and taxes lower. He is on a one-man crusade against wasteful spending in Washington. For that, he's been nicknamed the Sheriff, because John McCain knows that cutting government waste means we can lower the tax burden on American families and eliminate the inheritance tax and the unfair marriage penalty. Save Social Security once and for all by guaranteeing that all Social Security funds will be spent only on Social Security and kept out of the hands of politicians. But most of all, John McCain worries about what kind of country we're leaving our children. He's protecting them from the evils of internet smut by promoting the use of filtering technology. And he wants federal education dollars sent directly to local school districts so parents and teachers, not Washington bureaucrats, can decide how best to strengthen our schools. On issue after issue, John McCain defies the special interests, even when it hurts him politically. He knows that without campaign finance reform, we can't have real government reform. So he dares Washington to support his efforts to break the stranglehold that special interests and their money have on the political process. But to John McCain, our greatest duty is our national security. He's the nation's foremost leader in keeping America secure by keeping us strong. Because he knows all too well there will always be evil in the world. At a time when some leaders let us down, John McCain's a man we can believe and believe in. He is a man more tested and better prepared than anyone to lead America into the 21st century. John McCain for president. The character to do what's right and the courage to fight for it.